So finally, the day is here, Sangeeta. Thank you so much for this opportunity to have you on the podcast X Months Right. Such a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much. Was looking forward to it, and the day has arrived.
Ask me. So let's take a dive, Sangeeta. From the day one, I've been in your fan club. I've been a secret admirer for the energy that you bring in, the accomplishments that you have, the book that you have written, the way you connect with people, the way you have been able to rally people, infuse energy in people. I mean, there's so much that we can talk about you. For the moment, let's take a deeper dive in the life of Sangeeta. And if you may, share an episode from your life, from your childhood specifically, that brings a smile on your face today as well.
Yeah, that's a wonderful place to go to. We used to live in a bungalow because my father was a senior civil servant with the legal department, with the law ministry, the government of India, and we had a wonderful tree in the garden. So two of my very nice recollections of my younger days was in the winter we would sit outside the house on a charpai, right? A charpai is basically Hessian woven around pieces of wood to make it a place to sit. And my mother had a kitchen garden behind our house, and she used to grow all kinds of things, and there was fresh radish always growing there. And we would pull out a fresh radish. We'd tell the cook to get us nimbu and namak mirch. And in the winter sun, we would sit outside the house, make fresh uh, mooli with nimbu and namak
Wow.
lal mirch, and that was amazing. And we can't do that anymore. We live in a flat. The other thing was we had a wonderful tree in the front garden of the bungalow. And I used to love to climb that tree. So many afternoons I have spent sitting up in that tree. I don't know, feeling one with the leaves, and it was not a flowering plant tree, but with the little squirrels going up and down. And fortunately, I never saw any snakes there. Otherwise, I would have beat a hasty retreat. So these were some of the wonderful reflections, and I think it was lovely to be one with nature. We had our house was at the corner, and it ran a common garden hedge separating us from Talkatora Gardens, which was a huge garden, right? And I still remember that hole we had made in that garden hedge so that we could crawl through it and get on the other side. And we didn't have to go out of the gate and around down the street and into another big gate. So we just found the shortest route into that big garden. So these are some of the wonderful memories of childhood.
Yeah, yeah. Reminds me of the days that I have spent in Solon, where we would visit every year to my grandparents' house from my mother's side. And we'll just climb the trees and have almonds, we would have walnuts, we would have
Right.
apricots, we would have pears, we would have
Mm.
all kinds of fruits there. And that was fun. And, when siblings, cousins, when we all come together, when we all rally together, it's a fun of very different nature. It's a fun of very different mm, level altogether.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
miss them. I
absolutely.
miss them. Yeah.
And you remember those days, the younger days, we never ate mango by the one or two mangoes. So there would be
Yeah.
a mango orchard, and the ancestral homes. They would just go and pick mango from the tree and put it in baskets and tell each child to sit in front of one basket and say, "This is your basket. You eat as much as you want."
And today also I tell people that eating one mango at a time, it's disrespect to mangoes. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Yeah.
Oh dear.
So, Sangeeta, the journey that you began, where you would enjoy Reddish to where you are, it has been an amazing journey. So, please tell us about Sangeeta Talwar from the lens of a PR manager, from a lens of a marketing manager, if you may.
Okay, so let me just spend a few minutes on that, connect the early childhood to early adulthood. So I
Mm,
was the last of four siblings in the
mm,
family, and my parents were getting older. And fortunately, I got a very nice job when I finished my business management from IIM Kolkata. I got a job in Delhi, so my parents were in Delhi. And I was the odd man. I was the handyman around because I used to help with whatever was happening. So even in college, I remember, if there was any heavy lifting to be done, I used to do it because I was the
mm,
boy in the house, right? And then I led a very, very busy college life because
mm,
while I was studying, I would be, taking up assignments with the All India Radio as an announcer. I would be doing hosting fashion shows and all kinds of things. And then did my studies and,
mm.
got into business management and then arrived on the doorstep of Nestle India Limited on 1st of June 1979 in a
Wow.
freshly minted Kolkata cotton sari.
Mm, mm, mm.
And
43 years back.
yes, that's right,
Wow.
1979. So, uh, I, you know, I've had an amazing opportunity. So
Mm,
I was the first woman that Nestle hired into executive management. Otherwise, all the women who were there until then were all in administration and
mm,
administrative roles or assistants.
mm,
And so to an extent, the company was also learning. What do we do? I mean, they were a fast-moving consumer goods company. Distribution was very much brick and mortar out there with
mm,
millions and millions of mom and pop stores where the products were sold. There was no e-commerce and no computers, no mobile phones, etc. And so the very different scenario and rather difficult to have a woman traveling, in the country
and that too in
in
cotton
those years
sarees.
in cotton saris, absolutely in in a 1.5, 2 inch heel sandal that I used to always wear. And we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have packaged food, we didn't have
Mm,
packaged water. There was only two brands of cars. There was
mm,
only one airline. So we lived in a very, very sort of limited, constrained sort of environment. And it was a lot of challenge in the kind of role that I took on because being in marketing meant you knew the route into sales, and you walked enough markets, you'd met enough
mm,
dealers, and you'd worked with the sales people in sales. And so I used to travel a lot. I used to travel every month. I would travel about 5 to 6 days, and that kind of travel was really difficult
mm,
because there were no physical amenities, there was no infrastructure, there were places I went to where there was nothing to eat. So you picked
mm,
up some mithai shop, may one mithai, or you picked up a banana, or something like that, or you went on the highway and ate at a dhaba or something. So there was nothing
mm,
sort of available. So there were quite a few trials and tribulations, but I think the company was very supportive, and it was an excellent learning experience for me. And I was very fortunate. I got after being handed the smallest product in the company, I landed myself into a new products group that was actually to launch the what would become actually marketing history in the country. We didn't
mm,
know it then, but I got a great chance to actually work bottom up on Maggie and to actually start with just the weighing of the spices and putting
yeah.
together the taste maker, and then the whole works. And then I supported that particular group for its first 8, 10 years of life.
Mm,
So I think if your question was how would somebody in PR talk about this? So I think in terms of achievements, they would perhaps say that this is a person who sort of blazed a new trail, if
mm,
you like,
yeah.
because there were very few existing examples of anything that sort of she had to do in her professional life.
And in
Was
terms of launching an iconic brand like Maggie.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then supporting it through its ups and downs, Gaurav. That was
Yeah.
very important. And that's captured in the book,
Mm,
which I wrote, which Actually, in the first few years, it actually went really down. And at that time, I got an offer to work in Switzerland by the boss. And my boss said, I went to my boss and I said, what do you think? He said, I don't think you should go. And he gave me a wonderful piece of advice. He said, what you have launched is not doing well today. It's on the down, right? If you leave now, this is what you will carry for the rest of your life.
Wow.
What an amazing insight.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
decided not to go. And
Hmm.
of course, that super boss was then annoyed with
Yeah.
India and with me for not allowing that resource he wanted. But I stayed, Gaurav. I made sure
Hmm.
that that sales line turned around
Hmm.
and we did things in a way that there was no looking back
Hmm.
ever again.
Hmm.
And the brand just grew and grew and grew and continues to grow. And
Hmm.
just imagine if I had left at that stage.
Hmm. Hmm.
There
Yeah.
would have been two consequences. One, of course, I wouldn't have had the confidence of what I have today, of having built something which was really iconic and has survived the test of time, right? 40 years. And the other thing, I don't know how Maggie would have done
Hmm.
because
Wow.
if you ask, it's a symbiotic relationship, Gaurav. We often
Hmm.
don't recognize that. We and maybe it's a testament to the times and how things were organized then. But no matter what was happening on the brand,
Hmm.
technical, production, sourcing, creation, launching, whatever, I was that Spock, that single
Hmm.
point of contact. So I
Yeah.
was always part of the loop. And I always came and I was always allowed to come from the company's perspective, from the consumer perspective, to
Hmm.
every issue.
Hmm.
And that's how a great brand is built.
Hmm. Hmm.
You never want to compromise the consumer. You always, no matter what technical is saying, no matter what purchasing
Hmm.
is saying, no matter what the finance guys are saying about the bottom line or the cost, or you come at it from the consumer perspective,
Hmm.
always.
What beautiful lessons that I've picked up from here is never leave when you're at your low, leave when
When
you're
the
at your
chips are
high,
down. Yeah.
right? That's one. Second one is look at any situation in hand in case you would like to build a brand. And on the inside, you may want to call it a iconic brand only when you're looking at a situation from the consumer's perspective. Would love to hear more about the process, the method of building brands. Before that, Sangeeta, would love to hear. Tell me more about a day in the life of Sangeeta. On one hand, where she was the first executive committee member working in a mammoth like Nestle, and then launching a new brand on the other side as well. Right? It's like managing two battles on two different sides.
Excellent question, Gaurav. I want to begin the answer to that by saying something which I think is very, very important for every woman. And I make that distinction between being a woman and a man. Um, it's to have the confidence. And the confidence is just a word, but the confidence I'm talking about is no matter what, I can handle it. It's not about what will happen to you. You will fall sick. You will have instances when you are down, when you're up, you're smashed. You feel you just can't ever get up in life again. You've done so badly. But the confidence that no matter what, I can handle it. And that confidence, I think, got built into me also because of the kind of upbringing. So my parents were, I mean, we were a middle class family. My parents were both working. My father was, as I said, a senior civil servant in the law ministry. My mother was a teacher, and she used to leave at 9 in the morning. She would come back at 5. And a very, very courageous lady because she had a very bad ailment at age 32, and it had a debilitating effect on her physical self. But she worked till the age of 58 and she did everything. She cooked, cleaned, knitted sweaters. I mean, the works. So she's my idol. in terms of what one human being can do to contribute despite what they go through, and your mother's was similar. So anyway, so they were very open-minded, liberal. So I was always thrown into situations where I had to fend for myself. And being the youngest, I was out and about. I was always a person who connected with people. So I came out of being shy. I was a little shy in school, but I came out of that. And so I was always connected to many things and many people. And I learned to manage myself. And nothing would deter me. So I built up this amazing courage where I would pray to God and say, you will take care of me and I will take care of the rest, whatever I can. I'll do my best. That is the assurance I'll give you, but I know you'll take care of me. And I used to just go. I used to travel to places where men had never been before. And I mean, they would be, quite surprised. So that was the kind of background. So nothing deterred me. So I was up to any task that was required of me. So that was on the courage confidence side. So on the work front, on the professional side, you need to be extremely deep thinking, extremely strategic. You need to be able to do what I describe as fly vision, which is fly with the birds and have the vision of a fly. And flying with the birds actually helps you to shift your horizon and look at the bigger picture. And then you sort of you can re-strategize where you were, where you are, and where you'd like to be. But you need the vision of a fly for exceptional execution. Because if you don't have exceptional execution, all your strategies will remain only castles in the sky. They'll never become reality. And if they don't become reality, you don't have a business because you won't have a top line and you won't have a bottom line. So that's the way those two work. And I think you need to be very good at both. So, and in the middle, you have a very strong element of resources, people. And I'm not talking about capital and technology resources. There are other people looking after that. You have human resources. And I think the approach to that was always about engaging with people, inspiring them to see, my mind's picture or my vision. How could I engage and inspire them to see my vision, to be a part of the vision, and then enable them to help me to achieve where we wanted to be. So that was, and of course, a lot of very detailed working, a lot of,
I'm sure,
daily prioritization, reprioritization. I had, you had asked me another question some time ago, and I'd written 3 things that I wanted to share, and I wrote here. One is a very high sense of responsibility, and a very high sense of responsibility with a high sense of commitment. So usually, and there's another very nice personal example of this, I would never commit to something if I knew I couldn't do it or had a doubt that I couldn't. I'm not sure if I can do it. I would not commit to it. I would say, I'll come back to you. So a very simple, my father used to live on his own. My mother passed away 10 years plus before he passed away. So he used to live on his own, and he would always call in the morning and say, Beta, aaj aoge kya? Will you come and see me today? And my older sister was also in town, and she would also be asked the same question. And a lot of the times, I think she would say, I'll come. And a lot of the times I would tell him, Dad, I'm going to try. I won't promise you because it just depends what time I can get away from work. And 9 times out of 10, I would land up and she wouldn't. And I'm just mentioning that because it came through to me as a very stark difference for me personally, that I would not commit to something I am not sure I can deliver. And you just mentioned the other day in one of our coaching sessions that a tiger doesn't change its stripes. You always come at things the way you are, is the way you are in everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think to a large extent, despite having worked so many years, I'm still like that.
And I think that's one of the common threads that I have witnessed, I've noticed in all my conversations, in all our interactions, that your commitment to commitment, when you're saying that you would show up no matter what. And in case you're not been able to show up because of any ABCZ reason, you would inform. So thank you for laying that strong foundation for young professionals who are watching you and learning what it means to be a leader, Sangeeta. Thank you so much for bringing that. Sangeeta, what you're talking about is empowerment, engaging people, enabling people. I get it. Now, would love to hear from you because engaging with people, and that too specifically when there's a lot of biases that we operate from, and especially men, right? I would find it, and if I just sit in a time machine, go back 40 years back, 30 years back, it would have been extremely difficult for men to accept a women leader. We might be operating from certain biases. And here is a women leader talking about engaging, enabling. How easy, difficult was it for you to let go of what you were getting in return and yet take a stand for what you genuinely care for, engaging with individuals, enabling them, empowering them, making sure that they deliver on their promises? So,
Wonderful question. And, Gaurav, right through, and I went through some very difficult times as well. My first thought in my mind was not that I'm a woman. I never looked at myself as a woman. I looked at myself as a co-worker, as somebody who's part of the team. Even when I was leading the team, I never looked at myself as the boss, big boss. Everybody should do salam to me in the morning. No, never looked at myself like that. Always looked at myself as a person who was part of the team with more privileges. Yes, because I was the boss and I did carry the can. But I think there's a big difference if you don't look at that specific identity which sets you apart all the time. And, we talk of identity a lot in coaching. If you take away your focus from that, you tend to focus more on what is the outcome and not that person who's delivering the outcome. You focus on the outcome first. And so you are not a big piece in that puzzle. You're just one of the enablers in that puzzle. That's a perspective. So I never wanted any privileges from the company which were not due to me. So even when I was HR director actually for Nest, the time was such that people expected you to do a whole lot of things for yourself, because you become a big daddy in the company. I only told myself one thing. I said, if I can't do it for the rest of the management team, I won't do it for myself. End of story. I never took even a quarter of a cent of a privilege that all the hotels, everybody used to throw at me. Another principle when I was in HR, people would come and say, I have a personal issue. Can you not extend this loan by another 3 months? And I would only tell them one thing. I said, do you think this is a good scheme of the company? Yes, ma'am, it's a very good scheme. I said, has it benefited you? Yes, it has benefited me. I said, now put yourself in my shoes. 50 people like you come to me and say, can I extend this by another 3 months? Kya karoge aap? Will you be able to extend it? He said, no, ma'am. I said, you have your answer. So don't expect me to do something just for a few people. So HR, and there's a quick message here, that's why I'm focusing on it. It's very difficult job because you need to be personal, yet you need to be equitable. Equitable, which means each one sees you as being just, open, and fair. And that's a very difficult walk, but I'll stop there. So I'll go back to what you were asking me. So I never looked at myself as a woman and never wanted extra privileges from the company because I was a lady. And I want to quickly quote an instance here to you. There's one instance where somebody forgot to make my booking on a train. It was a 6-hour journey back from the factory to Delhi. And I got Eve teased the entire way. I didn't have a seat, so I was sitting in the corridor. And there was a bunch of young businessmen from that city who kept teasing me. They kept picking up my book, and somebody would adjust my suitcase when I came back from the toilet. And I was really harassed. I was very young. I just started working. So I came back and I told my boss, and he said, okay, I'm putting out a letter. We don't know how to treat our women. We should always be careful. I mean, I was the first lady executive, right? The company was also learning. So I told him, I said, sir, if you do that, here's my resignation letter. So he looked at me quizzically. He said, he said, he must have thought in his head, this lady is bonkers because I'm trying to help her. I mean, as the head of the company, I'm offering to do a letter on her behalf to the entire company. And here she's saying she'll resign. So he said, why? I said, sir, I didn't join this job to be wrapped up in cotton, put in the glass case, and put in the corner. I joined this job to work with everybody else to do what the job requires. The moment you put out that letter, everybody will put me in a corner in a glass case. That she's only good to look at. Don't even go near her. Don't give her any work because you know what? You might get a complaint. I said, sir, please don't put out any letter. I'm just sharing with you. So I want to make a point here, Gaurav, which is very important for men to understand about women. And it's a universal thing. It may vary in degrees depending on culture, situations, etc., age. Women often find it hard to share what they go through with anybody because if you share it with your father and your brother, that patriarchy will tell you, don't do it, stay at home. If you share it with your boss in the office, there are more men than women in offices still, who's more likely to be a man, he'll come back to you with a protective approach. So you can't share. And when I say share, sharing is about, I'm making you a part of my experience. It is not about always treating you as a problem solver. And there's a very big learning here, Gaurav.
Beautiful.
Very, very
Beautiful.
big learning here.
So beautiful.
Which was for me a big learning. Yeah, please.
Let me just repeat it. What you said is, I'm just sharing so that I can make you a part of the experience, not sharing with you so that you could be a problem solver.
Exactly.
Wow.
And our approach to sharing as humans, we come from our identity. We leap to our identity and say we can problem solve. Hey, did you try this? Can you do that? Can I help you in this? Can I help you in that? Even sometimes help is not warranted.
Required.
It's not required. It's not required. And that is where listening becomes, the solution to everything. So deep listening, which comes through coaching, is so fundamental to human living, actually, because you allow the other person the space to make you a part of their experience. Full stop. That's all they want.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, right now, I'm finding myself on the crossroads. I would like to move into two different directions. First direction is, I would love to hear from you. What was that moment in your life where you were appreciated, recognized, and you felt so grateful? Shucks, man, how could I get so lucky? I have personally come across several moments like that where I start to wonder, hey, how could I be so lucky in my life? I'm sure you would have experienced that as well when you felt genuinely grateful. What was that moment? How did you digest that without letting that get onto your head? That's one. The second part that I want to take is around when you work with women leaders. So let's start with the moment when you felt being grateful.
So, Gaurav, while a lot of my corporate achievements were in Nestle India, and I worked in Nestle Switzerland as well for a few years, I will talk about these moments of highs in two other contexts, right? So one was, I had taken on the role of managing director and chief executive officer of Mattel Toys, South Asia. And I had to go every quarter to El Segundo in Los Angeles, the headquarters, for our business presentations and discussions. So when I took on that role, my job was based out of Mumbai. When I took on that role, I looked at. There's a very funny incident here, which I'll narrate later. I looked at the whole business, and I realized it needed fundamental shifting, the whole approach to business, and that's the last chapter in my book. And so I went off to El Segundo, Los Angeles, with this short presentation on what I felt could be the toy business in India and how should Mattel be looking at it. And the head of Mattel and the three heads of they used to call it boys' toys, girls' toys, and games, I think. There were three business SBU heads who were worldwide heads for those businesses. And there were a few other people, and I was presenting to them. It was the first time I was meeting all of them together. At the end of my presentation, they stood up and they clapped. And it felt fantastic. It felt that they'd acknowledged the fact that what I had said had made sense to them. I never took these things personally. It didn't. So to me, the message was not what a fantastic person. That was not the message. The message was what a fantastic presentation, which means that the idea, the business, and everything is fantastic, is great. And so I went back with that confidence and I implemented that. And it was a loss-making business. I set it on the path of profitability. We did that in 18 months. We worked like dogs. We used to burn the midnight oil, but we made that happen. So that was a really high moment. Another high moment, which was not an appreciation for me, but I clapped like a 10-year-old child, was when every quarter the toys were, the new range of toys, and they used to plan 2 years in advance, were being presented. And this was the Harry Potter toys. And what a fantastic job they did, Gaurav, of the Harry Potter toys. They recreated the movie. They recreated the characters from the movie, and they were live presenting the Mattel toys, And I was just blown. I was clapping like a kid. I was, they used to present to all the heads of markets so that we could then tell them what would be the likely orders for those toys from their country. So that was another moment which really touched me when I realized that how important it is to keep the child in us alive. So important to keep that alive.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So and then I'll narrate just one other quick incident. I was appointed as the HR director for Nestle, and I was was a bit lost, wondering how would I do that whole assignment. And I was one of the 14 or 15 people invited to a worldwide HR conference, which the head of the director HR for Nestle Worldwide was organizing. She and her deputy were at that conference, and the usual thing, they broke us up into groups, and my group was 4 people, and they told me, the 3 men told me, we are going to hit the bar tonight. And I said, I don't feel like going to hit the bar, so who's going to do the group work? They said, oh, you do the group work, and we'll come back in the morning. We'll meet at 7:30. We'll catch up with you. Okay. Now, all of this was a little bit new to me because I'd never been in HR before, but I took on that task, and I wrote a presentation out on. We used to have those little acetate sheets, right? Slides nahi hote the. There were no slides at that time. So I wrote out the presentation in some whatever green and red colored pens. And then the next morning, none of these guys turned up because they'd all drunk too much and they'd overslept. So they turned up for the session. And they, of course, looked at me and said, but why don't you present? I said, okay, I mean, there's nobody else who knows what I've written, though I had discussed with them briefly. So I made that presentation, and the head of the director HR for Nestle Worldwide, she stood up and she said, this is the best presentation I've ever seen in my life. And she said, you talk You talk to the subject and you just got it right. The way HR should be positioned in the company. So Gaurav, I uh, got a huge confidence from that, because then I came back with all that confidence, saying that, I know what my starting points are in HR, and I know what the outcomes should look like, because it's been signed off by the senior most person in HR within the
Yeah,
company.
yeah.
And that's what it meant to me. And then I went about doing things in that role, which
Mm.
the company spoke about for many, many years after that, because it just turned things on its head.
Yeah. And I think that's where a genuine appreciation, acknowledgement from somebody that you look up to, uh, that's the difference that an appreciation or a genuine acknowledgement can do for an individual.
Yeah. So, if one can look at all these moments of high as not being moments that you have achieved on your own, because if you start looking at everything as emanating only from you, uh,
Such.
you tend not to appreciate all the
Yeah.
interdependencies that
Oh,
exist
absolutely. Absolutely.
within our human life and professional life as well.
Absolutely. I
And
think
then
that,
it goes to your head.
yeah, and I think that's the surest way to create a blunder for yourself.
Yes, yes, and Gaurav, I was trying to visualize this the other day in my head. When they say when you get to the top, the only way to go is down,
Hmm.
but you can shift that perspective,
Hmm.
because every top is part of another top.
Yeah.
And if you look at the way God has made mountains, He's
Hmm.
made them in ranges. You cross one range, you have to go down again a little bit to get to the next top, and then you have to go down on the other
Hmm.
side to get the next top. And that's the beauty of life. And if you can look at
Yeah.
every top you arrive at as just a stepping stone to the next top, that's how you
Yeah.
keep life progressive, and keep transforming.
It reminds me of my conversation with another friend of mine. His name is Patrick. And Patrick said that every time when you climb a mountain, you don't stay there. You stay there for a while, enjoy the beauty, and then you come down so that you can scale the next mountain. Now, having said that, Sangeeta, you are on the boards of several organizations as well. What do you think creates a distinction between a leader who is able to create an impact in the organization that she or he are part of, and somebody who has not been able to deliver on his or her promises? And here, I'm no way creating a distinction between male and female. I'm no
Right.
way talking about uh, leadership or women leadership, right? Would love to hear from you because you do a lot of work with C suite executives, you do a lot of work with women leaders, and you're on the boards as well. So you have a very clear cut understanding of what's happening.
Yeah. So I think, Gaurav, there's a lot of conversation around this these days. What are the traits of a good leader? And I'd like to choose a different starting point. I think if you want to be a good leader, you have to be a good human being, and you have to know how good you are. And I'm not saying that you have to be God Himself, because you cannot be. I think if you are aware of what kind of person you are and what are some of those blind spots you have, and you can continue to have them. I'm not saying, transform yourself and become a saint, or go and live on top of the Himalayas, or deprive yourself of everything. I'm not saying that. I'm not being moralistic. I'm saying be aware of yourself as a person, and be aware that you're part of a system, you're part of an ecosystem. Very, very important. And if you can be aware of these two things, then comes the next step, is how confident you are as a person. Now, if you, and all of us are only grades in the 0 to 100 there. I'm not at 100 and I'll never be. There are many things now that destabilize my confidence completely or put me in a negative zone. But if you can push yourself to always have a positive approach, a positive outlook, and be confident. So that's the base of yourself. and recognize that whatever you're doing and saying is going to have an impact on that ecosystem. So it's an interdependency that exists. You will impact it and it will impact you. That's kind of the basics. Then what people look for is for, leadership is not about you, it's about the people who are part of your team. And then it's about, bringing them excellent strategic thinking, showing them a path forward. What does the future look like? So crafting that future with them, being inclusive of them. So I would, for a lot of the new projects that I set up, which I've also mentioned in my book for the Tata Group, when I was in TGB, Tata Global Beverages, I would create that strategic vision. Then I would get buy into it. And then I would make everybody a partner of that vision. So they would own it as their vision. They would own it as something that they would like to do. And then I would walk that journey with them to enable them to get there. And as a leader, I think it's very important to be highly organized, to be disciplined, because and to be able to prioritize. And one of the things I always tell women, because women tend to suffer from this I'm very busy, busy bee credo, we call it in our criticism of women who don't have time to network and they're just busy, busy, busy. You have to look at life as a puzzle and pick the most important pieces of the puzzle and put those in place. And be willing to let the rest fall in place. You cannot complete that puzzle every time it appears. It's an impossible task. It's not humanly possible. So you pick your important pieces, put them on the board and say, these are important to me. These are my values. I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to always serve these and they'll always serve me. And the rest will fall into place. And just carry on in life like that. And even as a leader, whatever strategic initiatives you have, new projects, you're thinking about growth for the future, you need resources. Actually, you're flying blind a lot of the times because you don't know how competition is going to suddenly change. Competition can come out of the woodwork. Somebody who had no resources suddenly came into the game, right? So you're flying blind. So you need to have a few anchors which you can use. Your values as your anchors. You can use your resources as your anchors to keep you moving ahead while you fly blind.
So true. Yeah. Yeah. I just love the choice of words that you use, Sangeeta, when you said choose your anchor when you're flying blind. Also, I remember last time you spoke about something and that stayed with me. And it helped me to look at leadership from the lens of leadership rather than looking at leadership and women leadership. You mentioned this. You said all women work, all the women are working. Housework women are not paid, working women in organizations are paid. So there's so much of unpaid work happening. It stayed with me. Tell me more about your perspective on that and what led you to say this statement.
So, women work 24/7. If you're a working woman, you're working 24/7. You're doing office. When office closes, you come home, you have work at home. I'm not saying that men don't do housework. They do housework, and increasingly so, and some of them are extremely skilled at it. So, for example, my son-in-law is an excellent cook. So he gets into the kitchen, he'll make something and it'll just blow my daughter's brains out. She'll say, it's just fantastic, mom, what you've made. And then I'll tell him, I said, beta, mere ko bhi chahiye, mere liye bhi banao. So it's not about that. I think it's about being nurturing, being more nurturing as a creation of nature by God than men. So if you're more nurturing and you have the biological gift of producing human life, you feel responsible for what you are nurturing. And so you suffer from a guilt. And that guilt keeps you working 24/7. So especially working women have a really hard time. But okay, their plus point is that they earn some money, they have some freedom from that perspective, in order to spend on themselves or whatever, relax, enjoy, take a holiday with their girlfriends. For a housewife, she's working equally hard. You know how difficult it is to produce how many? 20 plus meals every week for everybody. Let's say there are 4 members in the house. You're making 80 meals a day. To each one's taste, you're bringing in a variety of ingredients. But you're bringing in choices, and you're bringing in nutrition, health. And it's got to be at the time that that person likes to eat it. Some like it hot and some like it cold, and some like it in the pot 9 days old. That's a nursery rhyme. And so everybody likes it in a different way. So you're catering to all of that. But all of that never gets paid. It's only paid through love, respect, etc., through relationships.
So beautiful.
Has anyone thought how much leisure time you should have? That you get tired, that you must have a break because just running the home for everybody who lives there is not the most entertaining thing for you. Has anyone thought of your leisure? I'm just saying that we take everything for granted. If the food isn't tasty, we'll just say, Aaj, acha, kam kyun kha? I don't much care for the potato today. It doesn't have that your normal, come on.
Yeah.
So we must learn at home to appreciate first and then criticize.
Absolutely. Sangeeta, you're involved in so many projects. You have been involved in so many things. You are on the board of several organizations. You are an executive coach. You are a consultant. You are involved in a couple of community projects. You are assisting a couple of budding entrepreneurs. You are a part of a couple of tribes and communities. I mean, where do you get so much of energy and what keeps you going?
What's ticking? The time bomb is ticking. Very difficult for me to answer that question, but I like to be gainfully engaged. I like to be involved and engaged with things. I don't like to sit idle. So I like to keep learning. And I think one of the biggest things in my head, Gaurav, which has never gone away and still very, very rampant and very, very strong, is that I like to contribute and I want to add value. So in my last, private sector role, which was with Tata Global Beverages, I used to tell my senior reportees that if you walk into my room, I must be able to add value to what you have walked in with. Otherwise, don't walk in. Don't come at all. That's my role as a leader. So I still like to do that. I like to add value. I like to help. I like to pitch into things. I like to learn. So I learned the piano some time back. I tried to learn golf, but something went wrong, so I didn't pursue it. So I've got back to my piano now. I've restarted yoga recently because I want to, I know as I get older, my muscle will convert to fat and I want to keep the equation, keep going the other way. So I've taken on a yoga teacher. He's just fantastic, who's just making sure that every muscle in my body is being called out. So and God is kind. I just have that energy to do this. And the day I don't, I will reduce the number of things I do. But I can still do coaching.
Yeah, I'm sure. You do wonders there as well. You are already doing wonders. So, Sangeeta, thank you so much, I think, for your time, for the wisdom, for the experiences that you have shared. Just curious, if you were to give a piece of advice to your 21-year-old self who was just starting off, what would you offer to her?
In the main, I wouldn't advise something diametrically different from what I did, except with a little. So I would say go forth, create your own, craft your own future with courage, confidence, and compassion. Love and care deeply, live life to the full, work really hard and party equally hard, but try to do it in balance. So if you want to have those tequila shots, don't have excessive tequila shots because you're damaging your system. When you're young, you don't realize, but all the excesses of our youth come back to bite us as we get older. And I think very importantly, find your chill time. What is important to you? What are some of the things that bring you joy and pleasure? It may be learning something. It may be helping somebody who needs that help, and do that and build it into your calendar every day. So don't become somebody who's too attached to work, who's too attached to something so that it blinds out everything else. Live a life in balance in that sense. And that's the only part I would change about myself. I think, Gaurav, for a long, long time, I worked very long hours, and I wish I could had the wisdom then. I didn't have me talking to me then. I wish I had the wisdom to take those last 2 hours, just come home, and the world would still go on. Nothing would have changed.
Thank you. I think, Sangeeta, you've been a great source of inspiration for me. Every time when I am stuck, I make sure that I speak to you to get some experiences, some sharing, your
Thank
wisdom,
you.
so that it can bring a shift in my perspectives. And there's so much to learn from you, be it energy, be it enthusiasm, be it childlike energies that you bring in, be it commitment, be it how to set the priorities in place and how to unlearn, learn, and relearn. I think there are so many lessons to learn from you. So thank you so much. A lot of shukran to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.